right, so how to get your mojo back. That's why you're here. And, it might be that you want to get it back. It might be that you want to find it or keep it. But we're talking all things mojo here. Many of you, when you hear the word mojo, will think of Austin Powers, one of the people who's made mojo famous. But it is, in my experience, an extraordinary word and very loaded and deep. So what is mojo? Well, in order to find out what mojo is, let's find out what no mojo is. And here are some examples which you can probably relate to. Frustration, distraction, lacking purpose, lacking focus, procrastination. So that's what it's not. What is it? Well, I think you'll agree that mojo is pretty universal. When I think of mojo, I think of things like connection, elation, excitement, laughter, a feeling that anything's possible, being in flow, being in the zone, being calm, centered and relaxed, engaged in hearty and deep conversation, being on one's board, both physically and metaphorically. Okay, but what is mojo? What's the definition? Well, I'd love to be able to give you a clear definition, like a fork does this and a computer does that. But mojo is a little bit like describing love. It changes in any given moment. But for now, a good enough description is to find, keep, or regain one's confidence, energy, or enthusiasm. To find, keep, or regain one's confidence, energy, or enthusiasm. Well, by chance, over the years, I've probably like you, I've found and lost my mojo, falling in love. I had my mojo, first job, wow, had my mojo, not getting a great performance review, lost my mojo, but an unexpected event brought it home to me. And I'll take you back to October 1999. I'm standing in a queue in Brixton, South London, waiting for the number 74 bus. Brixton, for those of you who know, or those of you who don't, is a rough, tough, arty, eclectic part of town with a reputation oftentimes for the wrong reasons. The bus will take me to a friend's house for the night. It's almost midnight on Friday. Music is blaring, sirens are wailing, cars are hooting. This is the high point for many of us, the end of a busy week and a whole weekend stretching ahead. I'm standing in the queue, watching life unfold in front of me. Two couples are talking about the big game on Saturday. Another couple are talking about the vibe at a club. The bus pulls up and we get on. So this is Brixton. This is what it looks like, downtown Brixton. The bus pulls on. We take our seats and something happens. Something changes. I can't quite put my finger on it. And then it dawns on me. Silence. All conversation has stopped. The only noise is the hum and whir of the engine. What's going on here? I ask myself. It's as if we're under a spell. All conversation and laughter gone. A conversation that I'd had with myself many times starts up again in my head. But this time, the two protagonists are crystal clear. And I see how each plays a massive role in my life. I refer to them as inspiration and the monkey mind. And the conversation goes like this. Inspiration begins. How strange. The whole bus has fallen silent. Wouldn't it be cool to get up and make a speech and stir things up a little bit? Monkey mind immediately responds back. That's a terrible idea. You'll only embarrass yourself. And what will people think? What will people say? I mean, you have no idea what to say anyway. You can't just get up and make a speech. You probably just freeze up and make a complete fool of yourself. And besides, remember that story you heard recently of someone being stabbed on a late night bus in Brixton? Inspiration shoots back. Oh, come on. Excuses, excuses. What's the worst that could happen? If nothing else, I'd have a great story to tell my grandkids. What a rush. Monkey mind responds again. Yeah, but let's be honest. You're too middle class. You're too privileged. You're completely out of touch with anyone who's on this bus. No one will even understand what you're talking about. On it went, backwards and forwards. One, a voice of abundance, possibility, and opportunity and creativity. The other, a voice of skepticism and scarcity and fear. But I instinctively knew that I was being presented with an enormous opportunity. The timing was perfect. I was on my way to a new life in South Africa, a place I'd grown up in, and to which I was now returning with the intention of making a difference and contributing to this extraordinary country, played in no small part by Nelson Mandela, whose incredible courage, decency of heart, and generosity had made it possible for people like me to build a life. But the monkey mind was at it again. Yeah, but come on, he's Nelson Mandela. I mean, who are you? And besides, you're on a bus in London, for heaven's sake, 6,000 miles away from South Africa. Nice one. If you want to lead, just wait until you get to South Africa. Don't do it yet. It'll be more appropriate that way. Appropriate. I noticed how my monkey mind threw that word out. It was a smart excuse to stay safe, maintain the status quo, and avoid risk at all costs. Inspiration responded. Leadership is now. Now. You never know. You could make a difference to just one person. The internal struggle felt real, but it was the voice of inspiration that won out in the end. I decided to go for it. The only way I could force myself to stand up was by imagining I was jumping out of an aeroplane. I looked at the imaginary lights over my right shoulder. 3, 2, 1. I stood up and walked to the front of the bus. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I walked to the front of the bus. But I only had the vaguest sense of what to say. That was it. I knew I would never get this moment, this opportunity again. And I got to the front and turned around to see a sea of faces. I now felt like I joined the ranks of the insane. Those people, if I'm honest, I do my best to avoid. The homeless, the drunks, the lost souls, the crazy folk, and the religious nutcases. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, I started. My name is Simon Ekin. I'd like to make a little speech. I'm not drunk, on a mission from God, doing a dare, or on a day release from an institution. Before getting on this bus, there was a lot of noise, but now there's silence. And I don't know why this is, and I'm wondering why this is. Blank faces, nothing. And then a thought came into my head. Get Nelson Mandela's name in. Talk about Nelson Mandela. Everyone knows who he is. Nelson Mandela, I said. What's the difference between you, him, and me? Fundamentally nothing. We're all human. But what's different about him was his commitment. And he never, ever gave up on his commitment. What do we know about commitment? As far as I can tell, we have a different relationship, many of us, to commitment. We start a relationship, it gets a little hard and we bail. We start an exercise routine at the start of the year, We're inspired. We sign up for the gym and the alarm clock goes at 6 o'clock and we put it on to snooze. Or we have an idea to save or invest money, but it somehow seems too difficult. So we turn our attention to credit and bright, shiny objects. In one of the seats, I noticed a young woman gently prod her partner in the ribs and smile. Something had shifted. I could no longer hear my heart pounding in my ears. Words seemed to find me, as if there was some magical teleprompter at play. They rolled out of my mouth with a coherence, flow, and energy that amazed me. I was in the zone. And as I spoke, my audience went from blank, expressionless faces to laughter, questions, and even friendly heckling. It was like watching popcorn. And before I knew it, I was approaching my stop. It felt like I'd been talking for hours, but it had been literally a few minutes. I thanked the audience for their time and attention and headed back to the exit at the back of the bus, and that's when I froze. There was a man standing there. He was gazing intently at me. He was about 6'5" tall, with a shaved head and a deep scar down his right cheek. Across his throat, he had a tattoo written in large letters. Above it was "cut here," above the perforated line. And as I approached the exit, he dropped his hands, spread his arms out wide, and grasped hold of the handrails. And as I walked towards him, and I came up into his space, something inside me said, relax, trust, surrender. Because my monkey mind was screaming, this is not good. I was now right up in his space. I could smell the nicotine, the garlic, and the alcohol on his breath. He leaned into me, going nowhere, and what he said to me changed my life. He pointed his finger into my face and he said, mate, there's a lot of people are gonna think you're fucking mad, but don't ever, ever stop what you're doing, all right? With that, he moved to one side and I carried on and exited the bus. It was extraordinary. Wow, I thought to myself. If I can transform a boring old bus ride into one of the events of my life, what is possible? I wanted more. I wanted others to get what I'd got. The die was cast. This is the energy that I left the bus with. And what happened next? Well, I did about 50 talks between that date and 2010 in a variety of different places. I suppose in some ways I was trying to recapture that incredible feeling I'd had. And one day at the end of 2010, I walked into a coffee shop here in Hout Bay in Cape Town, and I saw a leaflet. And the leaflet said, write a book in 90 days. I thought to myself, well, my wife is expressing an interest in writing a book. So I took it home and I gave it to her and I didn't think anything more of it. 90 days later, she tapped me on the shoulder and said, well, I've written my book, which turned out to be a bestseller, by the way. And she said, what are you going to do for 90 days? And I didn't hesitate for a moment. I knew exactly what I was going to do for 90 consecutive days. I was going to do the talks like I did on the bus. I set myself a goal of doing 90 talks in 90 days to random, unsuspecting groups of strangers. I spoke on buses, planes, trains, pubs, petrol stations, picnic spots, gymnasiums, and my absolute favorite, saunas. There's nothing like getting a group of naked, compromised men as a captive audience. These were some of the images that I took after the events, and I discovered some extraordinary things. The biggest lesson I learned was this: when I'm bold, mighty forces come to my aid. Do you know what I mean by that? I suspect that you do. You have some, like me, some experience of that where you didn't know what to do. You were trembling, you were fearful, and you did it. And somehow you look back and there were other forces working with you to make it happen. I'd like you just to close your eyes and consider this as I read it to you. It's called Nature Loves Courage by Terence McKenna, and it goes like this. Nature loves courage. You make the commitment and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed. Well, as a result of those talks, I wrote a book called The Art of Courage. And after my 90 talks in 90 days, I then the next year did 365 talks in 365 days. It was like a Zen discipline. I just kept going. The extraordinary conversations that happened, the comments, the emails that I would get from people I met. And overall, I've done over 1,000 of these talks. And whilst I made a difference, I'm very clear about that, I learned a lot. There was something missing. I started to ask myself, why am I doing this? What am I actually trying to achieve? Was it to set myself a challenge? Yes, absolutely. I love challenges. Was it to confront my fear and test my courage? Yes. Did I want to replicate my first bus talk? Yes. Did I want to encourage and inspire people? Absolutely. Did I want to look good, be the center of attention in my ego? Yes, sometimes. What was it really? And then it struck me. Connection. Connection to people, connection to myself, connection to this moment, connection to now. In a world that seems to be so often so disconnected and fractious, what I think we're all yearning for in our humanity is to connect and play and laugh and collaborate and make things, amazing things happen. So I reflected on the process and discovered some simple and powerful principles at play. Firstly, what I worked out was you need to be very clear about what you want. You can't just order a taxi and say, go to Cape Town. The taxi driver needs to know where you're going exactly. The second, I realized I needed to be clear on why I was doing it. Thirdly, I need to notice this monkey mind. If you just notice your monkey mind right now, I'll be silent for a few seconds and it'll start up very quickly, chirping away. What's he talking about? Monkey mind? I don't have a monkey mind. Do you have a monkey mind? What does monkey mind even mean anyway? The fourth discovery was there is only ever this moment. We live in the illusion as human beings that we have a future forever, or we live in the past of regrets and failure and memories. But we're missing the trick, I believe. The real trick is this moment right here. And fifth, to trust, believe, and have faith that when we step out, there will be a path to meet us. And finally, to celebrate and appreciate what we've accomplished. I think human beings are universally terrible at celebrating and appreciating the difference that we make and what we've accomplished. So I had stumbled upon what I now know to be the elements of a Mojo recipe. It was like I'd found chocolate cake in a world of bread and water. I wanted to help others. So I started coaching. And I developed a coaching system called the Mojo Dojo, which I'm going to talk to you about now. Now, even if we end up working together, not working together, I want you to pay really close attention to the steps, the 5 steps of the Mojo Dojo, because you can apply those today just in the knowledge of these steps. So the 5 steps are as follows. Firstly, be clear on what you want and get focused. Secondly, know why you want it. Thirdly, have a good enough plan. Fourth, have a toolkit of principles and distinctions. Electricians don't turn up to your house without a toolbox. Why would you engage in life without a toolkit of principles and distinctions? And finally, and most importantly, be your word. Your word is your power. So let me expand on these a little bit. The first one is being very clear on what you want and getting hyper-focused. So look at this scenario. I've got scenario A and scenario B. There's you or me at the bottom. We start our day, our month, our year, and we have an abundance of opportunities. Lots of them. Wow. And that feels good. But if you put a mirror up to the top of the triangle, what you have reflected back is a divergence of results. So you're getting more opportunities, but less results. And that doesn't feel great. If you look at the scenario on the other side, same situation, but this time, instead of lots of opportunities, we're being selective and discerning and focused with our opportunities. But that doesn't feel good because we feel like we're missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. But if you put the mirror up to the top of the triangle, what do we get reflected back? More, infinitely more. And that feels great. But the trouble is, in our world of distraction and technology and unlimited opportunities, many of us play over in scenario A on the left-hand side. So scenario A is scattered, scenario B is focused. Do you remember trying to light a piece of paper or some wood chippings with a magnifying glass? It takes patience. It takes focus of the sun rays to build a fire. You see, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Focus means removing distractions. Steve Jobs famously said, people think it was at Apple, our success is what we said yes to. It wasn't. It's what we said no to. But we are addicted to distractions, aren't we? Ultimately, we need to focus on the journey, not the destination. If you love what you're doing, you're focused. If you hate what you're doing, you're scattered. And the world steps aside for the person who knows where they're going. The second step is being very clear on why you want what you want. And oftentimes we either don't know this or we forget it. So we just get into the day-to-day humdrum of life. You see, anyone who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Your why is your purpose, and without a purpose, we wander aimlessly. See, when you can work without noticing time, you know you're working on purpose. You'll know your why when you can't sleep at night, thinking about it. The third step is to ensure that you have a good enough plan, not a perfect plan, but a good enough plan. The General Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, said, "I found in battle that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." You see, a perfect plan is a complete delusion. It's no way connected to reality. A good enough plan is a reality. See, when is your plan good enough? Oh, you can go on planning and planning and planning. You'll know it's good enough when you're motivated to take the first step and to keep moving forward. The definition of a good plan is action. And one of the features of a good enough plan is you can continually make changes on it because life is uncertain and we can be flexible. The fourth step is to have a toolkit of principles and distinctions. What do I mean by principles and distinctions? You see, distinctions are tools for clarity. A distinction is the difference between quite similar things. Making distinctions brings clarity and direction to your quest. For example, wanting something is very different to being committed to something. Wanting to be wealthy is very different to being committed to following a plan. An interest is very different from a desire. And trying is very different to making a promise. You see, taking one small action today and consistently is dramatically different to perfection tomorrow. And the fifth step, the glue that holds it all together, is your word. Our word is our power. What we say has the ability to make us billions or get us killed. Nothing is harder and more valuable than being our word. It's easy to make promises, isn't it? It's another thing to carry them out. As Shakespeare said, above all, to thine own self be true. Nothing is easier than pretending we are making progress, believing our own PR, excuses, reasons, and justifications. We as human beings are quite delusional. We don't really see the full picture of who we are, and yet others, husbands, wives, colleagues, can see us so clearly. If only we would stop being defensive and defending our ego and be open to that feedback. So these 5 steps provide the backbone of the Mojo Dojo. If you take one action from today, from what you're learning, and I would assert that 95% of this you know already, this time will have been well spent. But if you really want to know how to find, keep, or regain your mojo, regardless of your circumstances, then it's going to take more, isn't it? I'd love to help you. But first, let's do a quick recap. The 5 steps to the Mojo Dojo are: 1, being very clear on what you want. You could today decide to say no to these other things you've been talking about for years. Just take them off the list and get really focused on one thing. Secondly, be very clear on why you want it. You know why you want it, why you know you're in the right zone of purpose when you start to get tears in your eyes. Thirdly, ensure a good enough plan. 1, 2, or 3 steps is a good enough plan. It can be done within 30 seconds. Step number 4 is having a toolkit of principles and distinctions. And step number 5 is being your word as the source of your power. Does this Mojo Dojo thing work? Well, here are some things that a couple of clients have said. Steve is a CEO of a global risk management consultancy. What he wanted when he came to me for coaching was, I want to be better at time management. There was actually nothing wrong with his time management. His insight, his realization wasn't time management. It was that he wasn't being clear in his communication. He sharpened up his communication and produced the highest revenue they've ever produced within a month. JP Duminy is a former professional cricketer. He came to me because he wanted to be able to speak freely. His kiss of death, his worst nightmare, was someone saying, hey, JP, give us a few words. He would freeze up, go into his head, and his monkey mind would play havoc. His insight was he just needed to breathe, relax, and let the speech find him. And to this day, he speaks a lot, and he gives an absolutely appropriate, on-the-money speech every time. Different use of the word appropriate. And Luke, finally, is a property entrepreneur. He came to me because he wanted purpose, focus, and direction. He wanted to know where he was going. But his challenge wasn't that. He needed to pick a lane. He was afraid of saying no to some of those other opportunities. He picked a lane, and some remarkable things happened for him. One was he broke a world record in a sport he'd never even heard of before, which was indoor rowing, and he lost 17 kilograms. He's a big guy. So please don't be overawed by them. They would be the first to say, they're just ordinary people. I just want to be the best I can be. So if you want to know more about the Mojo Dojo, how I work, and if it's for you or not, please send me a message. Just pop me an email. There's my email address, simon@simonekin.com. And just in the subject line, say, let's talk. I'd be really happy to do that. We'll have a 30-minute conversation and see if I can help or not. I'm not in the business of selling anything. I'm in the business of finding out what your needs are and can I help you to achieve those needs. You're also welcome to WhatsApp me on the number there. Finally, if you want to get your free copy of my book, The Art of Courage, and discover your Mojometer rating, and I'll give you an assessment back, which I'll fill out and complete back to you, then please submit your email address. Go onto my website, simonekin.com, and register for my free download. Any questions? I know that Mark is going to do some questions, but that's a wrap. And I wish you a glorious 2022, one Mojo moment at a time.